Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to another episode of Intuitive Creators Spotlight. Today, I can't wait for us to dive into the empowering journey of Becky. She is a creative visionary, and she's also women's identity and confidence mentor. Becky has been through a lot of interesting situations in her life, and those things really made her stronger and stronger every single time. I can't wait for her to share more with you. Welcome, Becky. I'm really happy to see you here today.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me on. That's exciting.
Thank you for being here. Becky, can you please share with us more about your journey from feeling lost and disconnected? Because I know you've been through moments like those in your life, to then stepping slowly, and then more and more into the powerful women's identity and confidence coach or mentor.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a journey. So, kind of a little background. Um, my growing up was not what everybody would picture. It was pretty. Am I allowed to swear?
You are.
It was my upbringing was pretty shitty, and a lot of experiences that we'll get into today, and came with it this idea that I needed to keep shifting my who I was, how I was showing up to fit in, to be accepted, and part of that was I moved around a lot as a child, so I lived in various places within the UK. So I was constantly having to start over, constantly having to almost like regenerate myself, because then I was the new girl in school. So I was often shifting and changing and kind of suppressing who I was throughout my, especially my up until my late teen years, doing a lot of things that weren't true to me, that kind of suppressed who I was. And I was doing things simply to, people please, to be accepted, ridiculously kind and generous because it brought what I thought was friendship with it. Um, and I think, I became a mum quite young. So I was 18 when I had my first child. I now have five. This is usually where jaws hit the floor. I now have five. So I think when I became a mother, I I think a lot of, maybe a lot of women in the audience that are listening as well will kind of connect with what I'm about to say. Um, but I believe I denied myself so much love for myself that I often searched for it outside of myself. I searched for it in friendships, relationships, partnerships, which led to a lot of unhealthy choices around the people that I was choosing to allow into my life, and often being disappointed and then thinking the issue was me. Again, regenerating, to have a stable relationship. And I think a lot of women as well, when it comes to relationships, and it's that kind of dynamic, is they often choose to see the issue with themselves rather than the people that they're choosing. So things started changing for me once, I'd say, my third child was born. So we're kind of fast forwarding a little bit. So when I had my first child, I was in the kind of mentality of, well, I have nothing else in life. Everything else has gone wrong. I'd got a really good job that I'd just been fired from. Everything was just seemed to be just repeating itself on this kind of almost like self-sabotage cycle. And I found, when I discovered I was expecting, I was like, well, this little human is going to love me unconditionally, is not going to see my flaws, isn't going to see what's wrong with me. And even in that, in a lot of things that I've explored about myself in that reconnection, is actually that was putting a lot onto a child that wasn't even here yet, is expecting the love that I wasn't giving to myself. But I also realized that this was going to be a human being that I didn't have to be perfect for. I could be myself. And it was one thing I thought that I couldn't get wrong. So with my own childhood experiences, obviously I wanted to do completely different with my son and not have history repeating itself. So when I became a mother, and then my daughter was born, and then my third one was born, I will confirm if the girls are boys at some point. So when my third was born, I was very well into the role of mum. My partner went out and worked full time. I would look after the children, take care of the home, and somewhere along the way, I thought to myself, well, this is the dream, isn't it? This is the dream that's sold to every woman, that we are here to be the caretakers, to look after our children, to provide a happy home, and partner goes out and works, so we appreciate them. We have the tea on the table ready for when they come in. And throughout 2017, I had a small kind of business with no shade on network marketing. I had a small network marketing business, and again, I kind of reflecting back at different points, I realized that was just something to cover up the fact that I didn't actually know who I was outside of these four walls, outside of this role. And towards the end of 2017, I was kind of reaching a point where I was actually becoming depressed. I'd catch myself daydreaming. Every day was kind of it wasn't autopilot, but it was getting to the point where every day was predictable. I would get up, I would dress the children, I would take them to school, I would come home, I would clean up, I would have a cup of coffee, then go back out and pick my children up. I had literally no life outside of being a mum. And everything kind of shifted. So the whole saying, sometimes we have to break down to break through, is absolutely true in my case, is where things, this is why the whole representation of a phoenix rising from the ashes is absolutely true for many women, is everything had to break down. And I did go through almost like a dark soul of the night. It was probably the darkest time of my life that I'd been through, but it was at that point that I realized something needed to change. I had become so disconnected through trying to please my way through life, by trying to gain attention and friendship and love and acceptance from people that just weren't willing to give it, weren't willing to see who I was, that the only person that could do that was me. And from 2018, I began this kind of healing journey to reconnect all of those versions of myself, the versions that I'd been, the ones that had made choices that probably weren't the best choices, the versions of me that's probably shown up in those darker areas of our being, and just stand up for each version and just kind of almost like call them back so that I could feel whole as a woman. And even then, by 2020, I still didn't feel there yet. I still wasn't confident enough to step into fully who I was. I was still kind of hiding. I was hiding. So some of you in the audience may know me from the cosplay days, when I used to show up online in cosplay. I used to use that as almost like a protection. And it's only been, I'd say, the last two to 3 years that I've kind of just dropped all the masks and wore the best one of all, which is myself. It's my own. It's not a mask. It's me. And just get to reach that point where I'm confident and comfortable and secure in who I am. And as intimidating and aggressive as it sounds, is if there are people in my life that can't accept all of me, of who I am, the darker parts, the crazy parts, the weirdo, all sides of me, then I have not got time, because it's the most, as I was saying, it's the most valuable thing that we cannot get back. There's a saying that if it doesn't elevate you, then it's behind you. And that's one of the biggest things that I kind of live by now. So a big message that I put out into the world, although I work with women who have kids, women who don't have kids, is helping women to see, because ultimately I had to help myself see it, was that when we become a mother, your identity does not then become a role of mum. You have an identity, you have an individuality outside of that role. And I now refer to, because I used to say I'm just a mum. Like,
Mm.
there's no just about it. Like, but it was just a mum, or people say, oh, just be yourself. How can you just be yourself if you don't know who that self is? And now I refer to women who have kids as, instead of mothers, because that's another, it's a label, is women who have children, because they are a woman first. Their
Mhm.
role is mother. That label is mother. Yes, it's an inherent part of what you do, but it's not all of you.
Mhm.
And it's been such times, it's been difficult. As I say, I went through a very serious depression in 2018. I went through therapy. I worked through anxiety and many different kind of phobias and fears and things to get where I am. But I am so grateful to have been given those experiences, because I think if that had not have happened, I think I probably would still be the dutiful housewife doing not much of anything else. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah, and from everything that you've shared here in your as part of your story, I just loved how you with how much kindness you talked about calling back every version of yourself, giving love to every version of yourself. And isn't this interesting how, when we do that, we can then also serve or help or connect at our best with other people around us, because isn't this that a lot of the times you may hear like, oh, she's a mom, she needs to give everything to her child. But if you give everything of you to your child, it doesn't matter, okay, who is around you, your family, maybe you're a caretaker, maybe you have to give your presence to someone. But if you give all of you, then what's left? Where are you then in all of that journey? And I think that this is something that, like, a lot of people may think, oh yeah, you just have, if you have this label, you're a wife, you're a mom, you just have to do that, you have to give your all. But I love so much that you bring up this message in the world, Becky. I feel this is such an important one. And although it may sound like, yeah, whatever, we just have to discover ourselves, it's not talked enough about it, because a lot of women, that's why they are, we see all of these cover of the magazine. Oh, you have to look like this. Oh, you have to be a mom like this. You have to take care of your children like this. So in other words, society creates the rules for you. So, and how do you, to everyone who's watching us, if there is someone who feels like they're going through a phase in their life where like they just respond to other people's expectations or society's rules, what would you tell them? Like, because you've been through so much and you know how that feels like.
So obviously everything that I do and that I share, and the work that I do with other women, has all come from walking that path first. The path to self-discovery is not a path that is done in a day or two. There is so much, and there are times when it does get uncomfortable, where we do have to face parts of ourselves that maybe we don't want to, and maybe we show up for those versions that I was talking about. Sometimes we hold a lot of judgment for those versions of ourselves that make it so almost impossible to reconnect with who you are. But my best advice is to always start slowly. Start with just making one choice, to begin reconnecting with where you're at now, and just being with yourself and identifying, what is it? What small things can you start to bring into your life? What things can you do for yourself that maybe you've been denying? And that could be, just taking some time out to go for a walk. It could be dancing around your house and like you don't care. I know the whole saying, dance like you don't care, or like nobody's watching. Just these small things that you can start implementing in your life. One of the bigger ones, especially for those of you that have children, is so many of us have an inability, like almost like this inability to delegate and communicate with our partners what we would like them to do. And I suppose this kind of gets into relationships a little bit, but they do go hand in hand with the identity as a woman and you reclaiming that, because you need the support from people around you. You need the support from your friends, family, loved ones, spouses, partners, and your children as well. Is obviously making sure that we're managing expectations with our children. But part of that is this delegating things and communicating what it is that we need from our partners, from our loved ones, even from our children. You know, one of my usual phrases is when I need 5 minutes out, because 5 children, as you can guess, it gets a little bit chaotic here. If I need 5 minutes out, I sit with them and say, Mommy just needs five. Can I have 5 minutes? I'll take those 5 minutes. And you know, they've come to understand, and it comes down to boundaries, the boundaries with yourself, your boundaries with your family. But with that partnership, it is that delegating, is realizing that we are not supposed to be everything and all to everyone. You know, there's this whole saying that women and mothers are the glue that holds a family together, and while that might be true, it's also continuing this narrative that it's a woman's sole responsibility to keep her entire family together and keep her entire family, you know, connected and happy. And that's a huge mental load for a lot of women. That is it's a lot on our shoulders. So learning to communicate with your partner how they can help, communicate with them what they could do, because you know, man or woman, they're not mind readers. So
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
can drop hints and expect them to just know exactly what it is we need. We have to learn to communicate, to say, hey, so like today, for example, you know, being here, 2 of my children are home, one is ill. So I knew, you know, it may be likely it would get a bit noisy. So he's gone out for a walk. Obviously, the little ones are all nicely wrapped up. They've gone out for a walk so that I could come and do the interview. And it's asking for what you need. It's allowing yourself to use your voice, ask for what you need, verbalize it. And I think so many of us, and I used to be the same, become ashamed that we're asking for too much, that if we're asking for the afternoon off, or we're asking for an evening, or asking somebody to do the dishes, or could they cook, or could they take the children to school, or could they bath, just the smallest little things, we find it either like shameful to ask, that we're just supposed to do things uncomplainingly and always doing everything with a smile. Like that is one of the biggest, it's one of my pet peeves, is the whole idea that women should do everything, be everything, do everything uncomplainingly with a smile. Like,
Yeah.
no.
It,
So
and
yeah.
also you I see it as you are helping that person who's by your side to grow within themselves too, because then if you're asking your partner, can you please take care of our children for a while, you know, that means that person, the partner, has the possibility to have quality time with your children too, and to develop this bond between each other. And I can totally resonate with that, because as a mom myself, when my daughter was little, I would just ask my husband, can you please just spend some time with her? I need to go out for a walk. I just need to be with myself. And what that created, a really beautiful bond between them. And now, as she's growing, she trusts him as well. And it's like trusting both of us. And she knows that she can come and talk to both of us. If I'm busy, she'll talk to daddy. If daddy's busy, she'll talk to mommy. And like sometimes when the society tells us you have to do it like that, you have to take everything in your hands and do it yourself, we are also creating this gap between our partner and the rest of the household, the house, the children, and everything that we have together. And that's really important to think about that. So thank you so much for bringing this perspective, Becky. I'm really grateful for that. So, you know, as you have such a big experience in living through these different identities when you were a child, right? Because you moved a lot, then you became a mom at a very young age, then a partner, and then you have people who you work with as well. You have discovered your own identity.
Yeah.
At what point do you know that all of these things have been different identities, and I'm now ready to come back to myself and start discovering that?
I think for me, it's very simple to, I suppose it's simple for me to explain and probably not so much for an audience, but one of the things that helped me to really see just how secure I am as myself is I wake up now and my mind is, I know it's blank is going to seem really negative, but there is nothing that, oh, I have this to do today and I have that to do today. And, you know, walking into a room and worrying about what someone thinks of me or what they think of how I'm dressed or anything. The level of security and self-assurance I have now going through my day, like day to day now when I kind of wake up, I'm excited to see how the day unfolds, what might occur, and going with the flow of that, because 5 kids, I kind of have to go with the flow. But even in that, they've also taught me such a great lesson to be able to be in life rather than constantly, you know, what have I got to do today? I've got to do this and that, and stacking everything, which us, you know, we as women typically tend to do. We stack all of our things. Is just being in my day-to-day life, and you know, it helps me to no longer look at other people's lives and think I wish I had that life, and believing that somehow mine was lacking, or somehow something in me was inherently lacking that meant that I couldn't have the lives that I was looking at, you know, online or you know, in anybody else's world, or daydreaming as I'm washing the dishes and thinking, you know, how life would be different if I had this amount of money, if I won the lottery, or, you know, come into a large sum of money, how things would be different, and craving that. And now I'm in a place in my life, all of those versions of me has craved something, has either craved love, craved attention, craved validation, craved money, luxuries, you know. Each stage that I have been, I have desired something and not given myself the permission to have it, and made choices from that place. And now, because I'm in life, because I am content with where I'm at, I'm content within myself. And, you know, obviously there is more that I want, and I don't feel selfish for that. There is more to be found, more to be discovered, more to, it adds to the quality of my life, it adds to the quality of my family's life. It's not something that I feel is lacking, and that there's a big difference when you move from feeling like you lack something to seeing something that is going to contribute to the quality of it, and that you don't see anything lacking. That's when you move from scarcity to gratitude, and where you can start welcoming in more. And that's been a big indicator in how I feel as a woman, how I show up, and not needing the very things that I was searching for, the very things that I thought I was lacking. Inherently, I had to go back and give that to myself, give myself that love, give myself that attention, give myself that validation, and do those things for me, because at the end of the day, nobody else is going to do them for you. Yes, people can love you, people can appreciate you, but unless you're doing that for yourself first, you're always going to question it. You'll question the motivations, the reasons behind it, you know, and you'll, you know, for many, I used to be afraid of people seeing the truth of who I was and no longer wanting anything to do with me, you know, and that's another pressure that starts to stack up. And this whole self-judgment that we can have as women is, oh, if only they knew that I'm an absolute wreck behind closed doors, or, you know, and in the pressures of society. There was a line once, I think in 2018, that always stuck with me, is you really don't know what anybody else is waking up to on their morning. And anybody we see online on magazines, we see a snapshot. we don't see what they're actually waking up to. We don't see what it takes for them to show up in that way. But what we can do is focus on how we're waking up. So
I love that. And sometimes, yes, we are physical parents to our
yeah,
children, but sometimes in this process of self-discovery, we need to learn how to parent our own inner child as
yeah,
well. And it's so important to do that. And like you said, to give back to yourself all the love, the attention, the care, everything that maybe you felt in the past that you were lacking. And in this journey of self-discovery, Becky, of course, like you said, it's the things that you need to do for yourself and the growth that you have to go through. But of course, at some point when we want to go for courses or programs or whatever to buy something for ourselves, then there will be a time when we will eventually invest in ourselves. How do you look at the idea of investing in yourself as a woman?
I used to think it was selfish. Used to. So we were talking about this beforehand. So even something as simple as nails, hair done, that would be something I would never ever do, because as a woman who's got kids and responsibilities, it often felt really, really selfish to do. And it came with a level of guilt. And even when I first invested in doing what I do now into my business and starting those steps, that came with a hefty level of guilt as well that I often had to work through. Not spending, feeling like I was tearing myself in two, trying to work on my business and be there for my children. And I never wanted to sacrifice my time with the children. I didn't want to sacrifice my motherhood either. So in time, I did find an amazing balance of not trying to be all the things to everybody. But one of them, even something simple as getting my nails done is seen now as something that's investing in me and invest in how I want to show up, how I feel about myself, that I'm deserving and worthy. And one of the things with many women is they put a limit on how much they think they deserve and how much they think they're worthy of. That is often like underneath everything, is that they just don't think they're deserving of investing time into themselves. And it doesn't even have to be money, like investing money. It's investing time. It's just investing in you and what you need and listening to those needs and giving yourself what it is you need. If it's that time, if it's that love, if it's that appreciation, standing in front of a mirror and appreciating yourself, whatever it is, and investing in you is a non-negotiable. It's not something that is optional. And I think if more women were encouraged women, whether they have children, whether you have children or not, I think if that was encouraged more, I think we would see a lot less difficulties with women in who they are, how they're showing up, how they feel about themselves. And many women who feel like they are just going through life, where we're designed, we as humans, we deserve to thrive through it, to enjoy what life has to offer. And I think if women were supported in nurturing themselves and reconnecting and allowing them, and growing to the point where they show up as themselves, even if nobody else likes it. Because the one thing about being confident is you can still remain confident even though nobody else likes you. It's still loving yourself enough. Because when you do reach that point, you'll stop feeling like there is something missing, and you'll feel whole. So yeah, I would say investing in you is probably more than non-negotiable. It's almost vital for you to experience life the way that you want to experience it, in a way that you want to experience it, in a version of you that you want to experience it.
Such a valuable message, very important one. Let me ask you this: when somebody comes to you and they tell you, Becky, I've been following you, I've been learning from you, maybe bought some of your courses, I'm ready to work with you. What's your favorite thing in the work that you do? And if you can share like a story, of course, without maybe giving names if that's not possible, but if you can share like what's your favorite thing when they come to work with you and then you see these changes, I would love to hear that. And I'm sure everybody who's watching would love to hear that too.
Yeah, definitely. So my favorite thing is really digging into what a woman is passionate about. And it's not listening to the things that she's passionate about, but it's being able to either, because I do both on call and voice notes and things like Telegram, is either watching or listening to the energy shift when they're talking about, when they finally dig really deep into what it is that they truly want. Because many of us go through life thinking we know what we want based on what we're watching other people have, but actually what we don't do is allow ourselves to actually think, but what is it that I want? Not what I think I should want, but what is it I want? And when we finally get into that, watching or hearing how alive a woman becomes, and you probably see it on screen yourself, watching how alive a woman becomes or hearing that is just everything. It's something that is so true, so pure. There's the passion in there. It's just, it's free from anything that's going to limit her. It's free from any judgment. It's free from any societal stuff that bogs it down. It's just, it's wild, like in the best way. And that I love, because then I jump all over it and obviously help her then start begin to have those things and take those steps towards it. And initially it starts with that reconnection with that version of her that holds those desires, that those innermost desires. I have loads of stories from from different clients, from my community, and what I work on with women is making those small implementable changes, because I'm a big believer if we take on too much, we actually end up almost like flooding ourselves with a lot of doubt, a lot of we become cynical, we think, you know, we're never going to get there, it becomes too uncomfortable. So we actually there's a risk that women would retreat if we go at this too difficult, you know, in such a big way, in a big giant leap. I'm a big believer in it has to be in small steps, and when I talked earlier about reconnecting to all of those versions of yourself, that's what it's doing with each step. It's taking something from a version of you and claiming that back, calling it back. So it has to be done in small ways. So I've had clients that have been absolutely terrified of driving, for example, and put it off for a long while. And after a call in our community, we have something called fireside, which is calls that we do outside with the logs burning, and we throw things on the fire that we know just aren't for us. And the day after, she got back in the driving seat and went out driving, which was just phenomenal. I've had women that have called out really shit behavior from other women that have been more authoritative, more confident, because then we have the intimidation factor with women who are confident, who are seen as bold, that women who are only just on those starting steps aren't at the same level, and that's something I will never subscribe to. Nobody is superior to anyone. So there's been a client that's called out toxicity in the workplace and has felt bold and secure enough in herself to call that out obviously in a diplomatic way. I've had clients that have gone to another country by herself to concerts, women who have just simply put on dresses where they felt girly and felt pretty and just danced around in them and felt carefree, and somehow reconnecting with parts of themselves, the version of themselves that had bought that dress and worn it, you know, instead of it hiding away in a wardrobe. You know, there's so much. There's women who start to enforce boundaries, who realize that actually, and I think one of the biggest of all, that I am so incredibly proud of this woman. So if she does watch the interview, she's going to know exactly who she is. So last year I connected with a client who was very unhappy in her job, and did not want to be in it anymore and couldn't see a way through. And after working closely with her, within 3 months, she had handed in a notice and had walked into a new job. And I wish I could say it stopped there, but she just didn't. That was just part of the journey. She then went on to setting up a second side of her business, which started absolutely flourishing, which then enabled her to lower her hours in this other job. She was literally in this new job for about a month before she started reducing all of her hours. It was those boundaries and how much she was putting herself first and making what she wanted a priority. It meant the quality of the clients that were coming to her to work with her was shifting and changing. She was becoming more bold and more assertive in who she wanted to work with, who she didn't. And the whole evolution of that journey has just been so incredible. Women, even in real life, I have some women that I am friends with and I've worked with in real life, have gone from being stuck at home with their children to, I suppose because she's a friend, is introducing her to my friends and coffee groups and just getting out of the house and trusting, because that's a big thing, because you mentioned that earlier with your partner, is trusting the other parent to actually have the aptitude to look after our children. Because again, it comes to that trust, is trusting that somebody can take care of your children. You can go out and not actually have to worry. So we introduced her. So everything that I do is they are powerful steps that women are taking, that isn't such a giant leap that it's too much for her all at once. I feel like it has to be. It's almost like alchemy of all the versions that they've been is almost like bottling it into one unique fragrance, one unique scent. They have to take those steps to recall those little bits and then kind of continue with being on that path. Because I think as well with women, we set out on a path, we see a path, and we try to stay on it so much that we don't realize that path is designed to bend and move with us. It's fluid with the choices that we make. And I think if there's one thing that I share with all of my clients in whatever capacity I work with them, is we cannot become the version of ourselves that we dream of being, that we imagine as being when we see other women online and we think, oh God, I wish I could be that confident, is whatever version of you that you want to become. Because even identity, it shifts and changes. It doesn't, your identity is not fixed, it shifts and changes as you shift and change. Is you can't become the version of you that you actually want to be in your mind deep down unless you are taking action as that version. Otherwise, things will just stay the same as they've always stayed. We have to start kind of stepping out there. And that comes down to the comfort zone work, is making sure that we don't step too far. We step out of the comfort zone where we stretch it. We don't go striding out of it where it's then too much and we just decide when it was too uncomfortable, so we're never going to do it again. There's a fine line between the two. But there's one more for my client, because I was so proud of her. So I launched a mastermind last year, and one of the ladies in there had been showing up, found them, which was incredible. The feedback was absolutely incredible. And her last attendance to one of the masterminds was she decided she wanted to go off grid completely. She had realized she didn't want to be in the online space. She wanted to focus on her, reconnect with her, be with her son, and she wanted to be completely off grid, which obviously meant that she was leaving the mastermind. Mm-hmm. And opting away. And I could have at that point thought, I've lost a client, when actually she stepped up for herself. She stepped up for what she wanted. She stepped up for what she desired. And it comes back to what I said to you earlier, which was people come into our lives for a reason, a season, a lifetime, or a lesson. She came into my life for a short time, not a long time. I was just meant to be part of her journey. And if that meant her time with me allowed her to finally speak out loud what it was that she desired and actually take that action, then how could I ever feel disappointed
Oh,
with what?
wow. This is absolutely incredible. What a beautiful gift that you offered to this person. And I'm sure this person understands that. And you talk also with so much love about all of these stories. I can see that in your energy. I can see that in your eyes. And that analogy of like creating your own fragrance is just perfect. I could just visualize that. And thank you so much for bringing this wisdom here into this video, Becky. As we're wrapping up this episode, is there a last message that you wanted to share with everyone who's watching?
Well, there's so many. There is so many. But I suppose we could we'll always go back because I actually have it tattooed onto me. You can't see it because it's underneath here. So one of the tattoos I got at the starting stages of my business when I was just really starting this whole inner journey myself was we as women we're designed to fall in love with living life, with loving who we are and not just surviving it. I think, and that goes for guys as well. It goes for anyone. We aren't designed to go through this life just simply trying to get through life. We only have one, you know,
Mm.
and what a life it could be if we only allowed ourselves to have the kind of things that we actually want instead of having the world kind of dictating what it is that we're deserving of. You know, what you think you're deserving of, what you think you're worthy of, add 100 times to that. If you think you're only worth this, this, and this, add 100 times to it. It doesn't matter what your history is, what your childhood was like, whether you come from a privileged or underprivileged background, you know, trauma, it still doesn't diminish what you are worth having, what you are worth, what you are deserving of having. None of that can ever detract away from your value. So, you know, as somebody who has been through, I could write several books on my history. But it just goes to show, you know, it doesn't matter what your background is. What matters is what you believe inside, what you believe you can have, and what you think you don't. What you think you don't, you can't. Like you gotta really tune into what it is that you want. Really tune into where you've been told I want never gets is a big one.
What
What
a
I
powerful message. What a powerful, beautiful message. Thank you so much, Becky, for being here with me
no,
today.
thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. And thank you so much for watching this episode. Check out the description for this video to see how you can connect with Becky and myself and reach out to us. Let us know your thoughts about this episode. Ask Becky any questions, connect with her. And I can't wait to see you all in the next episode. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.